Good morning. My name is Susan Reardon. I'm the staff hearing officer, and I call the meeting of Wednesday, September 25th to order. First on the agenda is preliminary matters, and I haven't had any requests for changes to today's agenda, so we will hear the items that are listed on the agenda. Under announcements and appeals, we do have a project that's for an accessory dwelling unit at 232 Los Andes. And this project includes the conversion of an existing detached two-car garage slash accessory space into an ADU. And the parking that's lost due to the conversion is proposed to be replaced on the driveway. And pursuant to state law, accessory dwelling units within the coastal zone do not have a public hearing, but they do, if they're detached from the main structure, they do require a coastal development permit. So I'm just announcing my decision that after reviewing the staff report and doing a site visit, that pursuant to California Government Code Section 65852.2 and our local municipal code Section 28.44.110, I announce my decision to approve the coastal development permit, making the findings that are outlined in the written staff report dated September 18th of this year, and this action is subject to those conditions of approval as outlined in that staff report. And I have no other announcements. We've had no recent appeals. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the staff hearing officer on items not on today's agenda? No, seeing no one, we'll go to the first item on the regular agenda, which is a continued item. It's 1114 Del Sol Avenue. If the applicant would like to come up. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome back.
Okay, good morning again. So this is 1114 Del Sol Ave. This applicant was here at the staff hearing officer on August 28th, but requested the project to be continued in order to request a small addition that hadn't been noticed. So we needed to renotice this particular project. So just to recap, the request is for an interior setback modification to allow alterations of first floor window openings along this edge, as well as a minor addition within the 6-foot required easterly interior setback. And then the second modification request is an interior setback mod for to allow a bedroom and laundry room addition to encroach into the required 6-foot westerly interior setback, and to allow a change of use for a one-car garage to be converted to habitable space. Just again, recap. Staff supports this project because we think that both the encroachment of the new addition encroachment and the window changes are minor. We don't anticipate there are any privacy impacts to the adjacent neighbors. We feel like the garage, using this kind of line of development with this small addition, it kind of keeps in line with the existing development, and then the new garage is proposed to be conforming to the setback. So if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. I don't have any questions right now. Did you want to add anything else? Or can you state your name for the record?
Yeah. I'm James Bell, the architect, and for Stacy Gomes and Scott Whips, the owners.
And you're
I'm Scott Whips, the
okay.
owner of the property. Yeah. Scott Whips, the owner of the property.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes, so this hearing is just to include the 8-inch addition into the front that encroaches into the side setback. So,
Okay, great. Thank you. I don't have any questions for you right now, so I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1114 Del Sol Avenue? No, seeing no one. Have we received any emails this morning? No? Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. Yeah, we did have the hearing, like Ellen said, a couple weeks ago, and it came to light that you wish to increase the floor area or do an 8-inch addition, and it seems kind of trivial to have to continue it to notice it, but that's just the requirement. So
it's mostly administrative. Yeah, we just pushed it out to accommodate the structural.
Yeah. So as we discussed at that hearing, the modifications for the in the this western interior setback, it represents an appropriate improvement. It extends, the building line. It has no new openings in the interior setbacks, so that it's not anticipated to cause any adverse effects off your project site. And again, on the eastern setback, the change to allow that 8 inches won't even be noticeable to the neighbor in terms of the existing building there. So I appreciate that you guys were willing to, take the 2-week break and have the notice, because it does make for a better project in terms of the interior, not losing space to be able to accommodate the structural elements that you need. So with staff's not proposing any conditions, and I don't need to add any conditions to make findings. However, I do want to change the findings to incorporate the addition. Change the findings from what was included in the staff report dated August 19th, and it's an appropriate improvement for the lot. The change in size and location of the first floor windows are minimal and are not anticipated to adversely impact the adjacent property. And then the 8-inch extension of the existing non-conforming exterior wall of the residence is negligible and will not adversely impact the adjacent property. Furthermore, the existing wooden fencing on the adjacent parcel blocks the window and the residence from the neighbor's view so as not to significantly impact the neighbor's privacy. And then on the westerly one, again, that it's consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance, and it's necessary to promote uniformity of improvement on the lot because it follows the existing roof line and only encroaches in the setback towards the rear of the dwelling. No privacy issues are anticipated because no windows are proposed within the interior setback, and it's modest in size and scale and would not significantly impact it. So with those revised findings, I approve your project. My action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and they also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period, and if either of those would occur, Ellen would contact you.
Oh, very good.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So the next project is 237 Las Alturas. If the applicant would like to come up to the table. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
The applicant for 237, yeah.
I'm here, but I don't see my architects are here.
Oh, well, if you wish, we could,
Just email, I can find out where they are.
I'm happy to move on to the
would
next
you,
one.
would you want us just to skip over you and come back? We'll go to the next item and then come back to you,
Yeah, I guess so.
unless you can represent it or,
Well, I know what's going on, but I don't know exactly what you all may have to have from them. So,
I think it's just someone who knows what they can say about the project. I mean, I'm
Well, I
sure
can
you
do that.
probably are comfortable if you want to
Well-
expedite it, or we're happy to move on.
no, I appreciate that. Why don't we just,
okay.
I can't imagine why they aren't here. They like emailed me 10 times because I had to fly in from out of state.
Oh, you had a longer commute than them, huh?
A little bit. But yeah, let's do it. How are you, Ellen?
I'm wonderful. So, so today this project is 237 Las Alturas. The applicant is requesting a front setback modification to allow for a proposed plunge pool to be closer than the 15 feet to the front lot line along Homecrest Road. So, pardon me.
Yes.
So this is Las Alturas. This is Homecrest Road, which is private. The property is subject to 2 front setbacks. This is the new plunge pool that's closer than the 15-foot pool requirement. The existing development, so this is a 6,671 square foot site, and it's currently developed with a 2-story single-family residence with an attached 2-car garage underneath this area. The proposed project involves the conversion of the existing garage to habitable floor area, a partial remodel, interior remodel, new exterior doors and windows at the newly converted garage area underneath here. The relocation of parking to 2 uncovered parking spaces and a mechanical turntable here. Site improvements including this plunge pool, a new patio area, new HVAC system. And this proposal, the project also includes abatement of violations that were identified in a 2012 ZIR. The project did go to Single Family Design Board on January 7th, and the board commented that the front setback modification is aesthetically appropriate for an unusual property with the 2 front setbacks and the location of one of the front yards along Homecrest Road, the private street here. Just one thing to note that the SFDB commented that it doesn't pose any kind of consistency issues with the SFDB design guidelines. And prior to this applicant's return to, or for project design approval and before building permit, they will have to get approval by SFDB for the 2 uncovered parking spaces as part of the project. So again, the reason for the front setback modification is for the new plunge pool. For pools, it's a 15-foot requirement. So you can see this is the property line here. This pink line kind of represents 2 30-foot front setbacks and then the 10-foot interior setbacks. Pools have a different standard under Title 30 that they need to be 15 feet. But the plunge pool is proposed 5 feet 1 inch from the front lot line, the secondary front lot line, I should say. And basically, this is Homecrest Road along here sits at the bottom of a 13. Well, it's a gradient, but it's approximately a 13-foot CMU wall above. So the actual property is quite a bit higher. We can maybe turn to the site section. I think it's maybe the best one to see kind of what the. So here you can see, this is looking at it from the interior neighbors. So this little section is Homecrest Road. This is the back of the property. Let me see if there's that site wall.
Well, here's this.
There we go.
And there.
But in terms of the pool, this pool is located right here. So here's Homecrest Road. This is the approximately 13-foot CMU wall. The applicant is proposing a guardrail on top of that wall, and then the pool sits down underneath the little small plunge pool. I'm sorry, this is the plunge pool, and this is the separation, the 5-foot separation. And ultimately, staff was supportive of this particular request because we don't think, based on the height discrepancy between Homecrest Road and the plunge pool in the distance back, we don't think it's going to cause any kind of privacy issues. It is set down a little bit lower. You'll notice that the properties on the other side of Homecrest that are represented here are all front-facing. Many of them are covered by trees and landscaping. Covered parking is front-facing, so there's not a lot of window. You won't have as much interaction necessarily with your neighbors along that area, so we didn't necessarily see that as a problem. I kind of wanted to point out, in addition, on this site plan, you'll notice that there's a previously approved modification for the residents, and one of the conditions of approval for that was to have some kind of landscaping to create a little bit more of a privacy buffer. So the applicant has continued to, or is going to be keeping this bougainvillea hedge maintained at the height of the existing guardrail in order, again, to create a little bit more buffer. But that was just, again, kind of a conversation about what is this wall and what is the guardrail would be exempt from any kind of fence height based on the Title 30 zoning ordinance. So really what we're looking at is just this plunge pool. We feel like there's enough height separation between the bottom of Homecrest Road and then quite the separation between the other property, because most of them are all oriented to kind of face outward and look out towards the ocean. And let's see. Again, there is any other. That's really Another reason we support this is based on the overall configuration of the site. The actual covered parking doesn't even work. You can't get cars to pull in here. They won't actually fit. So the applicant has proposed a design that actually creates a larger non-conforming. They were already non-conforming to open yard, but it's actually increased in the non-conforming open yard and makes better sense in terms of the design. So that's why we could be supportive of it as well. This project is exempt from any other CEQA review under 15301 existing facilities and 15305 for minor alterations and land use limitations, and we haven't received any public comment on this project.
Okay, great, thank you. Would you like to state your name for the record and provide additional comments?
Happy. My name's James P. Glass. I'm the owner, occupant, my wife and I.
And are you Claudia? No?
No. Maria Martinez with DMHA.
So you're the, okay. Maria? Mm-hmm. Do you have any other comments that you want to add?
I think that was very, very well put. I think one of the issues that maybe this is difficult to visualize, although maybe you're very experienced with this and know what property we're talking about. This house was built in the 20s up here, and there's an enormous grade change here, just huge. Mm-hmm. So we literally look over everybody here who all look that way, because obviously that's the view. And the only unfortunate aspect of this for us, because it's a beautiful view and a really charming little house that we've tried to preserve everything about it, this is the back of all those people. You know, and we look at trash cans and we look at, the back end of their cars, because, they essentially have an open carport. The people next to them, and they actually own all these houses, they've just obviously taken their garage and sealed it off and use it as a part of their living space. And so their cars sit there, and that's one of the other things we were hoping to accomplish by some of what's going on here on this huge retaining wall. And it's
yeah, I was out to the
right.
side. Yeah.
So that's kind of it. And the other thing that's the parking is extremely difficult, and this is a very narrow drive, and this is a blind corner. I mean, all of us that live up here, this is really a bad scene. So for Claudia and I, having to back down into this has been a very, very difficult situation, and we're not getting any younger. It doesn't get any easier. So this turntable is really a magnificent option for us, and I'm sure you know how that works. So we can come down here, we can park both of our cars, we can turn around, and we can come safely back out. So that's not a lot of real choices on a site this tight, but that's kind of giving you the background, or what I'd like, just maybe to be on the record of why this has developed the way it has, and it has been a pretty challenging project. Okay. So I think it turned out really, really great. Okay. We're real thrilled about it.
Great, thank you. I don't have any questions right now for you. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this item at 237 Los Alturas Road? Seeing no one, have we received any emails? Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. Like I said, I did go out to the site and looked, and I actually did park on your driveway. I tried to back out.
Well,
so
I assume you didn't get hit.
Still alive.
I know. So yes, I experienced what you were talking about. In regards to your request, the front setback modification, front setback modifications are different than other kinds because the front setback is part of the public realm. Although it is private property, it is, part of the streetscape. But in your instance, like pointed out and saw on the site visit, that huge, tall retaining wall, that is the public street frontage, which you experience when you drive down the private road, or even as you're coming up Los Alturas, you see the big retaining wall. And what you're proposing, it's although it's considered a structure, it's not an above ground structure, in that it's below the elevation of the retaining wall, so it's not going to impact the public street openness or be visible from the public or private right-of-ways. And the purpose of the front setback isn't to not allow you to use it. So the fact that people are in there enjoying it as a backyard, that's, you can enjoy your property. It's just trying to create this openness type thing. So in this case, your request, it is consistent with the purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance. It wouldn't have any effect to the visual openness of the street. So I do find it as a supportable modification. Staff is proposing a condition of approval. You've read that and understand about the covered?
Yeah.
Yes.
I do actually have I have a comment regarding your floor plan. And it's not going to be a condition because you're not asking for any approvals from me regarding the floor plan, but I do want to point out that it will be brought up in plan check that as proposed, this basement area is not consistent with our zoning ordinance for residential elements, that given it does have adequate interior access, but you can have 2 out of the 3 improvements. So you can have a full bathroom. The three things are a full bathroom, an exterior exit or exterior access, or it's actually a utility sink or a bar sink. And so you can't have all 3. And so you need to do something, either cut off exterior access, which I know you don't want to do a half bath, well, these are your bedrooms, or take out the sink and this can't be designed like that. So it's just something that's going to come up
Noted.
during plan check.
The sink will go.
Yeah, just to let
Take
you
out
know.
the sink.
Yeah, so just with that comment, I make the findings, and I do want to add to them just the discussion I had that add to the finding that the proposed lunch pool, it's below the elevation of the retaining wall, and that it's not going to affect the visual openness of this street. So with those revisions to the findings, I approve the project, subject to the condition of approval as proposed by staff. And my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and they also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt for some reason this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period, and if either of those would occur, Ellen would contact you.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll go to the next item, which is 2515 Morel Road. The applicant would like to come up? Good morning.
Good morning.
Anytime you're ready, Ellen.
Okay, so this is 2515 Murrell Road. The applicants are seeking an interior setback modification to allow new windows to be located within the required 6-foot interior setback. Here we are along, here's Murrell. This is the interior setback that we're talking about. So this is an 8,929 square foot lot that's developed with a single family residence with an attached 2-car garage. This project, or this site does have a permit issued for an attached accessory dwelling unit located at the southeast or the rear corner of the residence under 2018 building permit. The proposed project involves the permitting of 2 as-built windows that were identified, I think, during building plan check. The project site contains existing violations from a 2017 enforcement case and also zoning information report. So basically, the accessory dwelling unit will be under that building permit. It hasn't been finalized and will not receive its final or issuance until some of these other items are cleaned up, is what I understand. So this project is exempt from the single-family design board, but it required an interior setback modification on the eastern side to allow the alterations of first-floor window openings that would encroach in the setback. One of the proposed windows serves the existing, let's see, the primary residence, one of the bedrooms of the primary residence, and then the other one serves the bathroom of the accessory dwelling unit. The two windows are, let's see, staff just didn't necessarily think that it was going to impact the adjacent neighbor. The adjacent neighbor's windows, I think if we go to the other page, they're 5 feet above finished floor. The window opening for the accessory dwelling unit bathroom is quite small. So we've got, this is the adjacent neighbor. This is the one as-built window here in the primary residence, and then the other one is this small accessory dwelling unit bathroom. That one doesn't even face, that just faces the open yard area, and it's quite small. So we don't expect there to be any privacy impacts along this one. This one, it is in line with the other window, but again, this window is 5 feet above finished floor area. It's kind of a long rectangular window. So there's not direct access to look straight in at one another. So we didn't anticipate that to be an issue either. This is in the coastal zone. It's in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, and it qualifies for a coastal exemption. We haven't received any public comment, and this project would be exempt under 15301 existing facilities and 15305 for the minor alterations and land use limitations. But if you wanted to say.
Great, thank you. Would you like to state your name for the record, provide additional comments?
Yeah, hi, Jarrett Gorin from Vanguard Planning.
Mike Ober with Vanguard Planning.
Okay.
So I think Ellen covered it, and a couple of clarifications as to the status of the accessory dwelling unit. That building permit's approved. The permit's been approved and it is issued. So when we're talking about finalized, we're talking about occupancy clearance on it.
Final
And
inspection.
yeah, so there were some other interior violations on here that are all being abated, and they issued this, but the final occupancy clearance is tied to these things being also final clearanced. So that's how those things are tied together. As to the modification, this is an original bedroom in the original house, and obviously it had a window on it of some sort. And the reason for this modification is we and staff looked hard to try to find any sort of documentation of what that original window size was. Just given the nature of plans from when they built this house, there was no way for us to confirm it. So since there is a new window there, we decided the conservative route was to just come and get a modification if that was supportable. And we think it is, because there was a window here before. Making the window slightly larger doesn't change any impacts to a neighboring property. And it does guarantee that we've got adequate egress, that the current window size provides that. It's also I don't know how critical this is, but it's a more efficient glass than what the original windows would have been. So that's a benefit. And then this bathroom one was an as-built. So somebody prior to our owner had converted this into a unit, and we legalized it as an ADU. They had this window here. We have to come for this modification anyway, and it's part of the same one. So we decided we would include that along with this one. And as a designer, we like to include passive ventilation into a bathroom whenever we can. The building code requires ventilation fans on all of them, but if you can get a window in one, it's always that's preferable if you can do that. So we want to include that window as well. And as Ellen pointed out, this is next to a yard area, and it's not like it's not like a family room or something. So we think that we would hope that would be supportable as well. All of this footprint of the building had been approved, so they didn't add on this whole thing illegally, but it had been approved. Yeah,
But it has a permit, just the conversion of
Correct.
it to an ADU or an IDU at that time.
an IDU. Yeah,
Was the violation. Okay. So,
Yes.
So in terms of a window, the window was probably there, because if this was always permitted, there has to be, okay.
Yeah, we don't know if the window was originally here or there, but when they permitted this, had it been there, it would have been closed off as part of
Yeah.
that permit, and they would have been required to provide one here. So in any previous scenario, there had to have been a window approved at that location. We weren't 100% on what the size of it was, and obviously if you change a window to a larger window within a setback, that triggers a modification, and so this is the way that we want to get it covered and permitted.
Okay, great, thank you. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 2515 Morel Road? See no one? Did we receive any emails this morning? I'll close the public hearing. I did go out to the site and visited the site, and I agree that there's windows do sometimes cause concerns or potential adverse effects to the neighbors, but there has to be some kind of window, and a window being there and making it larger isn't going to change really anything. It would allow someone to escape an emergency. So in regards to the bathroom window, it is a smaller window. You can see it. It's this one, yeah. So this one, so it is elevated and it's small, and so in terms of privacy impacts, and along with this fence and landscaping there, it is an appropriate improvement, supportable. This section says findings and conditions, but staff's not proposing any conditions, and I don't need to add any conditions to be able to make the findings. So I'll make the findings as outlined in the staff report and approve the project. And my action, as you heard on the other ones, is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And they also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period, and if either of those would occur, Ellen would contact you.
Okay,
Okay?
thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next item, which is 1803 Robin Street, if the applicant would like to come up. Good morning. Anytime you're ready, Ellen.
Okay, so this is 1803 Robin Street. The applicant is requesting a solar access modification to allow relief from the solar access ordinance for the second-story addition on a single-family residence. So this is a 5,706 square foot site. Again, it's currently developed with a one-story single-family residence with a covered front porch and a detached two-car garage. The proposed project involves a first-floor addition as well as a new second-story addition and other site improvements, including an interior remodel, a new wooden deck at the rear of the residence. This project did go through single-family design board to review the modification. It was only at consent, and it was reviewed on, or at least on April 2nd of this year. It was a consent review once it was determined that a modification was required. And the board was able to, or the two board members, Miller and Richards, were able to comment that it was aesthetically appropriate and consistent with the SFDB design guidelines. I do want to add that a question came up regarding how it was consistent with the SFDB guidelines. I did not attend the conversation, so I wasn't able to answer. And I spoke with the SFDB staff person as well as I contacted the two board members that were present that day, and they did not recall specifics about the specific findings in the SFDB guideline of what that conversation was. So I don't have any clear information, but that they just made comments that it met it. So, but not specifically how, and those meetings aren't recorded, so we aren't able to go back and look at those notes. Again, the project is for a second-story addition that requires a solar access modification for exceeding the maximum height allowance of the solar access height limitations along the westerly lot line. This particular lot has two north-facing lot lines. One is along Robbins Street here, and the other northerly lot line is to the west, facing the neighbor at 1805 Robbins. The zoning ordinance does allow for a modification of solar access height limitations in the single family, or like could allow if the limitations are found to be an unreasonable restriction. And that the solar height limit can be increased by 6 feet if it met specific criteria. And that criteria includes, and this is specifically for a second story, so that all portions of the second story must be within the existing perimeter of the building. The horizontal dimension of the portion of the building that exceeds the solar height limit must be no more than 25 feet, and that excludes the roof overhangs. The portion of the building that exceeds the solar height limit may not cast a shadow on a solar collector at 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and 3 p.m. On December 21st. And so that's what these diagrams will show. So this is 12 noon right here, which is facing north. 9 a.m. is goes northwest, and then 3 p.m. would be a northeast shadow. And lastly, the fourth criteria is the amount of sunlight on all south-facing windows on any adjacent lot may be no less than the amount of sunlight in the event that the maximum addition in compliance with the solar access height limitations were to be constructed. So staff did review the plans and found that the project meets all 4 criteria and for that second story addition. If you look at so it's all the addition, the second story addition is within the existing perimeter of the building. It doesn't exceed the 25 feet height. The applicant is able to show with this solar study that there's sufficient evidence by showing that the second story, which the dashed lines here represent the second story addition, and then the solid lines on all of these shadow studies show what the maximum height would be for the solar access ordinance of what that would be. So you can see that it doesn't necessarily shadow any more of the south-facing neighbors' windows. So that's where we were able to come with it. I know that through this process, the applicant was informed that generally, it might meet the requirements, but there could be conforming options, and so that did come up as part of the initial pre-consultation process and when you initially submitted. I just wanted to say that I'm going to get to CEQA in a minute, but I do want to kind of mention the public comment that we received. We had, I spoke with the next door neighbor and at 1805 Robbins, who was concerned about the additional shading on this property. This property does not currently have any solar panels or anything permitted at the time, but I think this neighbor was potentially concerned about the future solar opportunities on his property, and just looking at, again, like having additional shading, and was a little concerned about why the focus of the design was concentrated on this westerly edge when there was room to potentially design over on this side. And again, this is something that staff had also pointed out with this driveway here and having a little bit more of a buffer, that there could have been a conforming option over here. So I spoke with this neighbor in person. I came into the counter twice, and I spoke with him over the phone as well. This project we looked at the master environmental assessment. It is in an archaeological sensitivity zone, but there's no, at this moment, there's no ground disturbance that's proposed for this portion of it. So we've added a condition as a precautionary measure, but otherwise would be exempt from CEQA under 15301 and 15305, existing facilities and minor alterations and land use limitations. And if you have any questions, that wraps up.
I just have one question. Someone did come into the counter when you weren't in and wanted to look at plans. And so they couldn't find them, your plans, so I gave them the plans I had in my packet. Do you know, is that person?
Yes, so I followed up
Okay.
with, so I received a phone call
that
from
was the
him,
call,
and
okay.
I was told that they did receive plans, or that they were able to look at plans, but then I offered to meet with them the next day at the counter so I could walk through it with them.
Yeah, I didn't speak with them or anything, but the staff person that was at the counter asked if I knew where plans were, and I offered mine. So, okay. Right, great, thank you. That's the only question I have. Would you like to state your name for the record and provide additional
I'm
comments?
Harold Powell, and I'm the designer.
Noah Levitt, I'm the owner.
Okay, would you like to add any comments?
I think that Helen did a really good job. If in fact they ever were to put solar panels on this house, this shadow line, which is what is allowed by the ordinance, would shade the area in any event.
And not at 9 a.m., but here's noon.
Yes, right. So, well, I'm just even at 9 a.m., but the shadow, the additional shadow casted by it's actually a foot over, is this area. So it wouldn't impact them putting solar panels on their house at all. It wouldn't, the modification wouldn't change how they would be able to put solar panels on their house in any event. It doesn't affect that area. There's no shadow cast by the area that's allowed by the modification. So that's important, I think, for the neighbor to understand so that he feels comfortable with it, that there's really no impact on him, possibility of solar panels. And I haven't had a chance to talk to him. I wish I had it because I would have helped him to clarify that. And then it's quite a small house. And when we went around and around trying to figure out how we could add without impacting the yard, because they have kids and they wanted to save the yard, and plus we'd have to do a modification for the yard. We came up with this plan over quite some time, and then we submitted, but we were under the misconception that this was the northerly property line, that it didn't have two northerly property lines, and that came up well after we had already submitted to building and safety and gotten through design review. And then, so the Levitts were all the way to the final moment of building and safety when it became apparent that we had a problem with that. So we went back to design, and we've discussed at length why we ended up here and how we got here. And I think it's a really good design. I think design review saw that too. They see it. You know, if you look at the elevations, you can see that it's modest. This is already set at 7 feet. You know, the walls of the upstairs are pulled down so that it you know, it's not scale matches the small and the intimate nature of the house. So this is the addition here, and this is the little dormer windows that come out the front. So, and then you can see here if you haven't seen it. This is the area we're talking about. This is the part that actually encroaches into the zoning of the solar access.
So is this here a roof overhang, or what's this?
That's existing. That's the existing ridge line.
Well, because the site plan shows it right up to the second story, so is it this right here?
No, that's existing.
Correct.
And this is a first story addition. So this
Right,
is
so
lower.
this is the first,
Yeah, that's the first story addition right there. Right. So is that clear? This is a
this
overhang.
is the backyard looking,
Yeah. Right. So yeah, that's right. So what we're looking at is this is the a first story,
no, that's-
this is a setback. And the house is actually, the main body of the house and the addition is 7 feet off, so it's set back further than what would be allowed. I think that's all.
Okay, so then, so the answer, so if I were to ask you what conforming options you looked at, the answer would be none, because it sounds like you became aware that there was 2 north property lines
No,
later.
actually we did. And
So
I
why?
explained that in the letter. Let me cover that then.
Okay.
So I thought maybe you'd read the letter.
Well, I did read the letter, but I'd
Okay,
like to
so
ask questions here.
here we are.
Can
So here's the small little house, and these are existing bedrooms, right? And this is the living room in the existing house, which you don't have, is kitchen, dining, living room, right? And there's a wall through here. So we looked at how could we get an upstairs addition without, so the bedrooms are here now, and they have a. So we ended up with, if we put the stairs here, we'd block the southern exposure, and if we put the stairs here, we'd block the way between the living room and the. So we ended up with only being one place for the stairs. Now, if the stairs were here, they would bisect the room, or if the room was moved over to here, the stairs would come up the middle of the room. So it's difficult, very difficult. In small buildings like this, stairs are a really big part of design, and how you find a way to get upstairs, which is what drove us to where we ended up, because the stairs on here blocked us. The stairs, if you move the addition over here, you bisect the addition with the stairs, or if you put the stairs here, then you divide the living room from the. So that's why we ended up getting here. Not that we didn't want to try to conform, because we did. So, and we lowered the height of the building with all those ideas. We considered everything. We wanted to, so we did everything we could to get to the place where we didn't require modification. The worst situation we could have, we didn't want to get to this place, but we did the best we could to not get there.
Okay, so the other question I have is regarding your shadow study here. So this shows, this is the existing, these two are the same. I have 2 of the same scales. Well, anyways, so so this is the existing roof line right here. Here's the existing roof line right here. Okay, so then when you look, this isn't representative of what could be built, because this is only like 5 feet. You don't get to 8 feet to like here. So to be able to get the clearance on the 2-story house, it would be set back. So showing that this is the shadow for what's allowed by the ordinance, that's not exactly true given the existing situation. It is back. So can you explain that to me, please?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Because you say it's allowed 16 as the height, and that's actually what the existing house is 16. So the existing house meets it. Now you're saying that you could.
So proposed is 3 feet above what's allowed. So that's what this shadow is, right?
I know.
So this is a line of 16 feet right here.
Okay, but if you were to build this, what's allowed, the existing house is here. So you couldn't add a second story in this area because this is only 5 feet. So you're trying to show what's allowed by the ordinance, but what's allowed by the ordinance isn't reality. So what's allowed by the ordinance actually wouldn't start to right here, which would then make the peak come over more.
I understand. At this point on the property, 7 feet back from the setback, you can go up 16 feet.
Correct.
Right, so that's what this line shows you. That's what that line is. That's the line.
Okay.
So, and as you state, that's the condition that exists now.
Right.
So we're, at that point, 3 feet above.
Right, okay.
So that's what this shadow line represents. So is that clear? So you're right about this, but the body of the building, it tapers up along the roof line, so that by the time you get here, we're still 3 feet above what's allowed. And when we get here, we're 3 feet above what's allowed. See, so does that
Yeah,
make sense?
okay, all right.
So-
I don't think you're still not understanding what I'm talking about, but,
Well, I mean, all we can do is show, this shows you what would be allowed by the ordinance.
okay.
And this shows you what we're proposing. So this is the difference. And so if we wanted to put the wall here for the second story addition, the wall could only be 5 feet tall. That's what you're saying, right?
It's the existing situation, yeah, so,
But no, I know, but what you're saying is that here, if we wanted this wall of this, if we wanted, right now we're at 16 feet. This shadow diagram has been such a, so we're here, we're like right here. If we wanted to make, this is the wall we're concerned with right here. So you're saying that this wall right here would have to be 5 feet tall in order to meet the ordinance, and that's true. And that's why we have to get a modification, because we're above that point.
right.
So that's the whole issue this is the crux of the issue why we're here.
Okay.
And we did everything we could to try to move this over. Believe me, we worked, Noah, did we not? I mean, we spent a lot of time going around. This plan has been hashed over and over and over again.
Okay, that's fine, it's now before me, I understand you
I know,
hashed
but
with the
I'm just
design
trying,
board.
I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to express to you that we did try our best, and I think we've come up with a good design. And because it meets the modification for the solar access, I think we're there. I think because this does meet the criteria that the modification allows, and I think that's why the modification is there, right? It exists for that purpose.
Yeah, there's actually two findings that need to be made. The first one, the modification is consistent with the general purposes of this title or the specific purposes of the zoning district in which the project is located.
Right.
So we need to find that. And then the second one is the modification or the actual findings that went through, that Ellen went through.
Right.
In the resolution, it does say it may be granted. It doesn't say it's automatically
No, I
granted.
didn't
So it's,
expect that.
okay.
That's why we're here.
Okay.
We're hoping that.
Okay, and then, so my other question is, given, I don't understand why this was reviewed by consent versus the full board with the solar mod, but the minutes, and you were there, I wasn't there, and Ellen.
I can address that.
Let me finish my statement, please. Okay, so the minutes just say, the proposed modification is consistent with the single-family design board design guidelines and city ordinances. Well, it's asking for a mod, so it's not consistent with city ordinances, for one. But the other one, the design guidelines in the solar, it says solar design, and these are the design guidelines that they review, and it says solar access refers to the potential to receive adequate sunlight in order for certain areas of the property to enjoy the benefit of sunlight. It's important for energy efficiency and landscaping, as well as for homes that use solar energy for space heating, cooling, water heating, electricity, and/or daylighting. And then it says, where possible, orient building volumes and second stories away from the north, west, and east property lines when feasible to allow for the solar access of neighboring properties. And so was that discussed, this point discussed at the consent? Okay, so
Yes.
what did they say? How is it found?
It was discussed, I think, at both meetings. So they didn't, as far as I can remember, they didn't see that it raised any issues concerning that. So when they looked at it the first time and the second time, when the full board looked at it and when the consent board looked at it, they didn't see that where it was placed and its scale. That's why I talked about the scale of and how we held it down as much as we could, caused a problem.
Well,
remember.
I watched the single-family design board when it went and got the PDA, and there was no discussion of solar. It wasn't brought up
No,
because.
I didn't. I just talked about scale and how
Okay.
how it matched the scale of the property. I didn't.
I'm
to
specifically
say
talking
that-
about solar design and how, it's talking about where possible, orientated away from their property lines, because I understand that this house right now doesn't have solar panels, but it's a stated goal of the city and,
Right,
and the
we
whole
wanted
state
to-
for solar.
And as you can see that if Noah was to do what he's allowed to do, the shadow already casts at 9 a.m. At noon, it doesn't cast in the area where they would want to put their solar panels, right? So
This is where they'd want to put them.
Right, and
Which
so-
is showing this right here. It's not all the way out on this side, but it's showing like this, so
Right. So
it
if
is in
they
this
wanted
area.
to put them here, the shadow that's allowed by the ordinance and is already cast by the house, because you know the house is 16 feet tall, is right here. This is that shadow that exists now, and this is the increased shadow by
Yeah,
allowing.
which is like 20 by 4.
Yeah, but it's on the other side. It's on the north side of the house. So if the panels were here, it's not affecting it, right? And plus, then the increased shadows out here in the yard, not over the house here, and here the increased shadows in the street. So I think that's the most important part of this whole exercise, is to realize that this difference isn't a difference that's going to impact the neighbor's ability to put solar panels on. This difference isn't going to impact them at all.
Okay.
You see, it's not even in there. The shadow the increased shadow is not on the property, on the house, and here it's in a part of the house where you wouldn't put solar panels anyway.
Okay, all right. Well, those are my questions for right now. I'll get into discussion after. I have request to speak from Anna Marie Gott.
It was someone that was donating minutes to me. Sorry, I wrote it backwards.
Okay, yeah, because then it says Anna Marie Gott's donating it to Victoria.
And then there's a line that says
Right, yeah.
vice versa, basically.
Okay, all right. All right, great. So,
Good morning. I just wanted to make a comment that, first of all, I think I have been going to ABR meetings since 2015. There has only been one time in which anyone has discussed solar access. I do not believe that projects are actually typically reviewed, nor are the boards trained in understanding what solar access is and how to apply that when they're looking at projects. The only reason that I have ever heard about a project with regard to solar access is because an architect actually lived next door. And there was an appeal yesterday at City Council regarding solar access. So I do not believe that our boards are trained, they are not informed, and as the staff hearing officer mentioned, she had seen no discussion at the Single Family Design Board about solar access. And you are right, it's a requirement, and I don't believe that staff is actually appropriately looking at these projects because no one is looking at this. I have not seen a PRT, a DART report, a pre-application report since 2015 that has ever discussed solar access. This project does not have a solar study that can actually show the effect of this building on the neighboring property based upon the December date that the staff and the City Council has actually looked at. So I don't believe that you should do a thing until a solar access study is actually done. And there was a really great solar access study done that was shown at the appeal for 1108 Olive, which actually compared photos and images of everything on the study before and after, and you could actually see a substantial difference. So I don't believe that you should actually approve this today. Demand that be reviewed, and don't allow a project to actually come to this board unless solar access has actually been discussed by the full board, because they really need to understand it. They need to review it, and you cannot have someone on consent make a decision like this without any information and no knowledge of the solar access ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I don't have any other requests to speak. Is there anyone else who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1803 Robin Street? No, seeing no one. Did we receive any emails? No, I'll close the public hearing. I did go out to the site and looked at the neighborhood and noticed there were there are second stories in this area. The majority of them are set back from this interior property line, which got me just thinking about the project. And I have concerns with it, and I know the resolution, mind blank, the solar access resolution that does allow for these types of modifications to be requested. It talks about the criteria, which Ellen has said, but right in it, it's right at the very stated intro, it says, it is the goal of the city to promote the use of renewable energy resources, including solar energy. And I realize there are some times in the day or the early morning that the conforming addition and maybe the existing residence already exceeds that, but I have concerns. There is a conforming option in this situation, and that it can be moved away from that interior setback, and it's important not to shade your neighbors. And I just can't make the finding. I can't find that it is an appropriate improvement, in that it's not. I wish it would have gone to the full board, because it's not consistent with the purpose and intent of the zone district. When you look at the purpose and intent of the zone district, it says, ensure adequate light, air, and open space for each residence, enhance livability, and develop and sustain a suitable residential environment. I don't feel it's consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. It's not consistent, or it hasn't been explained by the design board how it's consistent with their design guidelines in terms of location and trying to orientate second-story additions away from the west, north, and east interior setbacks. And so I can't make the finding that's outlined in the staff report, and I'd be inclined to deny the project. I'll give you a chance to respond to that if you would like. I know you've already responded a lot.
Well, I don't think that I can change your mind. It seems like your mind was made up before you came. I think that there is some confusion, and Ellen and I have been through this shadow diagram, and I think that the woman who came to speak, this is a solar, that's what this is. That's what we've done. We've done a solar analysis of what would the impact of this addition would be. That's the work that we've done, and we've spent a lot of time doing that. That's what this is about, and this is what the ordinance requires you to do this shadow diagram to show the difference between what you propose and what's allowed. And I've shown you, I think, more than once that what's allowed would impact the neighbor, but that's the condition that exists now. We know that, right? Because it's 16 feet. We're already impacting. So let me just finish,
No,
please.
I'm not going to. Yes, I am.
So now, this is the difference that we're talking about. This right here. So this is really important for her to understand.
So you need
too,
to talk
if
to
she
me.
can
Yes,
see.
no, you
And,
need to talk
I
to
just want everyone to feel like we didn't just try to, we didn't go through all this exercise just to get here and show you something that you wouldn't approve. We made every effort to show you something that we thought you would, that you would see the wisdom of it. Right? And so that's why this is so important, and that's why the work that Ellen and I and the other members of the staff did in producing this shadow diagram is so important, because we did do that exercise. We did do a solar analysis, and we've spent a lot of time on this, haven't we? Back and forth. Matt, Michelle, myself, we put hours and hours and hours into this to get it right and to show what we needed to show. And staff looked at it and said, you're right. We can back this because we have, with you, done the solar analysis. And we have seen that it doesn't further impact the neighbor. It doesn't further impact their southern windows, and it doesn't impact their ability to put solar panels on it. So in that respect, we did a lot of work. And Noah's been there through this whole process, and his wife and his 2 small children, trying to get this little addition done to their house. And so I think that, in all fairness, you should, we should say this in the minutes here, that the solar analysis was done, and it was done correctly, and it was approved by staff. And that you not seeing that, because I don't know, you haven't said that you do, I think that, do you see that the solar analysis was done, and that staff?
Yeah, but I don't think you understood what I said.
Right.
There's 2 components to the
I
findings, okay?
I understand that.
1 and 2.
I
And so-
understand that. And then I did try to, and I guess I failed at that, to address the reason why the addition is here in terms of what Noah and his family can afford to do. And I know that hardship is a part of this. And for him and his family to put it over here is a hardship in terms of what they'll have to remodel the bedrooms, take out, it's a much more difficult process to move it over here. That's why it's not there. It would have been easy to do that, and we would have done that if it was easy. You must appreciate that. Why wouldn't we have? Why would he spend all this money going through a modification if it was easy just to put it over here? So we did explore all that. You must understand
I
that.
understand all that.
So now, you do have to consider the hardship this man and his family have been through trying to get this little addition done, 300 square foot addition to his house. So he has 2 small children, he has 2 bedrooms, and it's now almost a year and a half, almost 2 years, and countless amounts. So I don't see, I mean, I know that you have discretion in this matter, and I know you have to consider a lot of different aspects. But I think the one person who's he's sitting right here.
I understand.
So-
I totally understand hardship, financial issues, and all that. I have findings I need to uphold.
I know.
And when there's
I don't-
leeway to look in the findings to do different things, I do that. But in this case, I cannot make the finding that this is consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance, nor with the design guidelines. And so my action would be, I would have to deny the project. You can appeal it to the Planning Commission. There's seven commissioners.
What about this? Because I think that part of your problem is that that design review, it went to consent.
Correct.
What if design review what if this were to go back before a full board of design review and they said it was okay? How would you feel about that?
If I were to continue this to allow the full board to look at that, I would not guarantee an approval when it got here, but I would take that into consideration.
Well, how about that? Can we do
If
that?
you request that, you can request, I can continue it. What's the timeline? Let me see make sure we have time. November 26th. So I can continue it a month for, 2 meetings. I don't know what the timeline is. I can't continue it indefinitely because of this timeline.
Of course, we don't want that.
But if you want me to consider that, yes, I would be open to consider it. You can go back to the design board, and then you can provide any additional information you have, any additional solar study type information you want to provide. I understand this. I read this and I look at it. I know how to do that. I would be open to that if that's the route you want to go.
Well, I think that's preferable to being denied.
So why don't we
we'll do that.
do it for 3 staff hearing officer meetings for now, because that would give you adequate time to get back on the, full board. Mary, what's 3 meetings from now? Do you have the calendar? Because if I continue it to a particular date, then it doesn't need renoticing. It'll
Okay.
be reflected in the minutes, the date it was continued to.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, okay.
And then one final thing. I thought I heard you say in the last comments that you made that if there was further solar analysis we could do, but I don't know what that would be. I don't know how we could do that. I think what we've done, and I hope that everyone agrees that what we've done is what was required by the modification, and that I don't know what else we could do. We can't. There's no more information.
Okay.
That we could-
What I meant by that comment is if there's any additional information when you go away and you think that, oh, we can provide this to give the staff hearing officer to enable her to get to a different conclusion. So whatever, I just generically called it.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Thanks for making me clarify it.
You have about a minute and a half more for some. It's my understanding that.
You can lift that up if you want to. Not to. There you go. It'd be more comfortable for you.
My understanding that, I'm good friends with my neighbor, Mike, and it's certainly not my intention to like shade him out or cause him any strife at all. When we first made the plans for the addition, that as that was happening, these new laws in California passed about, any new additions having solar panels, which we already planned ourselves to have solar panels. I'm a big environmental guy too. And then as that passed, that it became also, and I think very appropriately, a law to, or this new ordinance or whatever you call it, to create these shade diagrams, because obviously any neighbors that are going to have any additions at any point are going to want access to solar too. And so when we had already had our designs that all came into effect, and then we did the measurements, and it was over like 1% or something. I can't remember. It seemed like it was a very small percent that we were over with the shades. So we redesigned it one time already, where it was the whole upstairs unit was brought back 3 feet. It was re-engineered. It was completely redone, which is part of the reason why it's been a year and a half. So, and then from the redo, that we were now within the shade limits, whatever those limits are, according to these diagrams. I don't know. I don't understand the diagram myself, but but that's my understanding of what the process has been. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So it seems like there's been some playing around with the structure already to try to get it to shade correctly within the allowable limits, and it sounded to me like we were within the allowable limits, which is what I would want for my neighbor Mike. But I thought that's where we were at this point. But I guess we can review it again November 6th.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
okay.
So then I will continue this item to November 6th to allow you time to go back to the full board of the Single Family Design Board and provide whatever additional information you feel appropriate. Right? All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Sure. We'll go to the last item, which is 601 APS, if the applicant would like to come up. Oh, here, you keep this. Good morning.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is 601 Alameda Padre Serra. The applicant today is requesting a lot area modification to allow a second residential unit on an R2 zone parcel with less than the required lot area for lots with 20 to 30% slopes. The existing site, it's 7,591 square feet. It's currently developed with a 2-story single-family residence with an attached 2-car garage. This is, just to kind of orient, we have Coda Street along here. This is Alameda Padre Serra, so it's a corner lot with 2 front setbacks. This is the portion of the existing development with a driveway off of Coda Street here and a two-car garage underneath. The proposed project involves the construction of a new residential unit with an attached two-car garage. So that is, this is the existing unit. It would be to create a new driveway off of, I'll say, I'm going to use the shortened term APS for Alameda Padre Serra. So off of APS to pull into a two-car driveway with a lower level bedrooms and master baths, and then an upper level plan that includes a living room, kitchen, and exterior decks on the that upper level. This project also includes 2 minor zoning exception requests to allow for a wall and a fence height to exceed 42 inches within the first 10 feet of the northerly front lot line. That's, again, along this area. And then to allow a second minor zoning exception to allow existing southerly and westerly hedges to remain to go up to a maximum of 12 feet in height along those 2 lot lines, so the 2 interior lot lines. And the project also includes site work such as, as I mentioned, the new driveway along APS, improvements to the right-of-way in this area, and the removal of an existing stone pine tree that is in the setback, and a replacement tree with a Parks Commission approved tree, and some demolition work of an as-built sink and countertop are proposed in this lower level removal of this as-built sink. And we can talk a little bit more about it, but there are 2 as-built laundry facilities in this lower level. And so the applicant has been made aware that one of them would need to be removed. And this permit would address all violations identified in ENF 2019-00519 to abate those issues. So this did go to the Architectural Board of Review on May 20th, and then again on June 3rd. The board was able to say that the project, the mass, bulk, and scale of the project was supportable as proposed. The board did express concerns regarding the windows along the south elevation of the new residential unit along here, and that could create privacy issues with the adjacent neighbor, and there was some discussion of how to encourage trees to be planted along that to create more privacy. And then this, I do want to point out that on the elevations, this site received a prior approval. I'm going to keep flipping. The applicant provided some context of a previously approved project from 2017 of this kind of pink outline that showed the prior form of what was approved. So that's just in relation to what's being approved or what's being reviewed today. In regards to the tree removal, on August 24th of 2016, the Parks Commission reviewed and approved the removal of that existing stone pine tree that's in the setback along APS, and said that it should be replaced with a jacaranda tree on the subject property. You'll notice that staff included 2 conditions of approval to the staff report to address that long-term landscaping and tree maintenance to make sure that if this is approved, that the jacaranda tree that was to be replaced would be properly cared for and addressed if it was unhealthy. Going back to, let's go back to the site plan. A little bit about that. So the request is a lot area modification in the R2 zone for, let's see, and really R2 is intended to provide areas for medium density residential where the principal land use of land is 2-unit residences. The density is limited based on the lot size and then the slope. This particular parcel has an average slope of 23.7%, and based on that topography is just limited to 1 residential unit. And in order, with the slope of between 20 and 30%, the lot would need to be 14,000 square feet to be able to propose a second unit that would conform to the zoning ordinance. So again, the applicant is requesting the modification to construct a second unit with less than the required lot area. Staff is supportive of this modification, as adding a second unit on site is an improvement to the lot, and per the city's general plan policies, the production of affordable housing is one of the highest priority land uses in the city. The only way the staff could get to support is if there was an affordable unit, if affordability was kind of approved with this project. We've added a condition that was consistent with the previous project, that affordability would be met over the standard condition of approval for affordability. And otherwise, we looked at this project. It does meet the open yard requirements and setbacks, and generally that's kind of how we got to consent to be able to support this. I do want to acknowledge that this particular project or parcel has a long history of enforcement for unpermitted work. There are previous enforcement cases from 2001 and 2002 that identified the creation of an illegal dwelling unit in the basement area, this lower level portion, in this area. Without the required permits. And as a result of those 2001 and 2002 enforcement cases, the property owner was required to record a zoning compliance declaration on the property, allowing only 1 dwelling unit on site, and recording that a document state that it would be unlawful to install unauthorized food preparation facilities on site, and a list of other items. The owner was. This kind of conversation came up again in 2017 when the previous project was being reviewed before the staff hearing officer and planning commission. There wasn't an enforcement case at that time, but as part of the conditions of approval, there was a discussion. One of the conditions from that time that has also been added to this staff report is to ensure that this subfloor space that's currently a dirt floor could not be turned into habitable space. And so that condition was carried over. Again, that wasn't, it wasn't under enforcement in 2017, but again, I think the idea that staff could support this, but we also really want to make sure that we're not creating the potential for more than 2 units to be allowed or to be presented as an opportunity. And then let's see, I'm going to keep going. So that's really, so if there was a question about that subfloor area, that's what we mean by not being able to convert that to habitable space. But then we also looked at this, the rest of this lower level, and there has been unpermitted work since the 2017 case. In 2019, just in July, building enforcement confirmed that there's been more unpermitted work on site, that laundry facilities have been added in 2 locations, that there is a sink that's been added and countertops. And so, again, there's just looking at this, we kind of took a little bit firmer stance to say that it's included in the staff report, saying that we really want to look at this and how we can keep this from turning into a 3rd potential unit. By conditioning it, we think one of the best options to do that would be to remove the exterior doorway, the exterior access. Right now, this doorway to the lower level is permitted, But there is an as-built door here out of this bedroom that we would suggest to remove and replace with not a door, but a window or wall, whatever you deem appropriate. There's another access from the garage that you come in from the garage. There's a really narrow hallway that has interior access up to this floorway. This is supposed to have a wall right here. I'm sorry, a door. Forgive me. It's supposed to have a door. That too was removed. The building inspector confirmed that that was removed as well. So, it does make sense to be able to come into a garage, be able to walk inside of your home and up to the second story to get to the kitchen in this area where, again, but it would be a more extreme measure to wall that off, but that was a consideration. But again, staff did not suggest that. And as I mentioned, right now there are 2 as-built laundry facilities, and staff is supportive of one to remain, but not both, because this current, the existing home does not have a laundry facility on this level. So we suggested that, again, we would be supportive of having one laundry facility for washer and dryer on site. And let's see if there's, I want to just make sure I'm getting through my notes. In terms of the CEQA review, this is in an archaeologically and geologically sensitive area, but there are ARC reports on file that for the subject lot or the adjacent lot, noting that no potential impacts to archaeological resources are anticipated, so we've added a standard condition of approval to that. This project doesn't require any further environmental review under CEQA and would require the 15183 projects consistent with the general plan, the finding that you would need to make for this to create another unit on site. And I do want to kind of move into the public comment that we've received for this project. I think I'd like to list through some names and addresses and then try to put into context some of the things that I've heard about this project. We have Victoria Valente, 1323 East Coda, multiple letters, communications at the counter, and phone calls. Trudy and Bruce Ramsey at 20 Los Alturas Road. Again, we've received letters and conversations at the planning counter. BJ Denetra, 606 APS, letter. Deborah Delva, 500 block APS letter. Greg Baker, 1308 Coda Street, multiple letters. And really, to kind of sum up what I've heard, and I also want to say we heard from Jeffrey Arthur, 1105 Bass Street, who is in support of this project for a number of reasons. This gentleman was helped out by the owner and who received kind of more affordable housing while he was a student, while on a limited income, and he didn't think that the project diminished the charm of Santa Barbara or the neighborhood and really created an opportunity for intergenerational living situations. So we had one letter in support. In regards to those who had concerns about the project, a lot of it has to do with the creation of 3 or 4 units potentially on site and privacy and just the history of unpermitted work that based on the repeated unpermitted work and then signatures of the zoning compliance declarations which aren't followed, and then having concern for more opportunities for that to come up again. We had multiple people talk about maintaining the vistas and views along APS. This public right-of-way, it's not slated to be turned into a public sidewalk at the moment, but this is kind of quite a pedestrian thoroughfare to walk along APS
pedestrian thoroughfare?
May I
What does
finish
that-
with my, I'm going to
What
finish
does
with
that
my,
mean?
Letter.
Okay, what does that mean?
meaning that people walk along APS, but there's just questions, how to maintain different views and vistas. It's not called out from a staff perspective, it was not called out in the CEQA review as being one of the vistas that is protected. There were concerns about the new garage and over here, this new garage and the windows that are proposed and the potential to create habitable space here and that it wouldn't be used for parking purposes, that this area could potentially look in on the neighbor, the interior neighbor who kind of sits at this property down here. And over the conversations at ABR, there were concerns about the mass bulk and scale of the project, and the 3 stories again, and just being a little bit more of a little bit more dominant to the next door neighbors. And a couple other questions came up about, or concerns about pursuing other options, the accessory dwelling unit that I didn't mention this earlier, but this property owner did submit for an accessory dwelling unit that was submitted to a building, but received comments back from staff but hasn't followed up. So that's still an open permit and has
No,
not.
it's been officially withdrawn. I'm sorry. There was a letter written, signed by the owner, officially withdrawing that application.
I'm sorry, I did not realize that.
Yeah.
And then there has been a more recent concern about fixing cars in the driveway, and we have enforcement staff who are continuing to look into that.
Okay, so what's your recommendation?
So the recommendation, again, going back to what we were talking about, is staff think that this is that we can support this project, but again, I think the main concern is how do we limit the opportunities to create a 3rd unit on site. And so our staff suggestion is to remove these 2 exterior doorways in order to kind of not have this be an accessible 3rd unit. Again, the history of unpermitted work, it's kind of hard to say when things could happen inside, so to have an exterior change that would be more noticeable from the public right-of-way, that we feel like would be the better option in order to prevent that 3rd unit from being created. Again, we're less concerned about which laundry facility stays. It's more like which one do they want to propose, but the zoning ordinance only allows 1 laundry facility per unit, so they would have to get rid of one of them. We would say that they need to take out the sink and the countertops because we don't want the creation of a new kitchen here. And for your consideration, it would be, again, staff didn't recommend this, it would be a little bit more extreme, but to wall this off so as not to create, again, the potential for an exterior access.
Okay, so, all right, great, thank you. I do have one question. So the previous, or just clarification, the previous project, you mentioned the ADU has been withdrawn. The previous approved project was withdrawn also, so this is a brand new project.
Right.
That can't go forward either.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, both were withdrawn by letter. Before we could even submit this, it had to be withdrawn. So, and they were.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Do you want to state your name for the record?
Kirk Gradine, architect. Yes, I have a number of additional comments. So there's no time limitation on my presentation, right?
Well, 5 minutes, but yeah.
Really? 5 minutes? Because I can't go over all the things that she's just mentioned in 5 minutes. There's no way. All right. Well, first of all,
I want you to be able to say.
thanks. Because if I try to rush through it, it's to the detriment of the project. So first of all, I feel like the staff report is, it's not a feeling. By objective criteria, the staff report does not include relevant information, and it states other information inaccurately. So when I started to look through this, I was saying, is this the same project that we're talking about? So number one, in the first paragraph, staff fails to mention that the previous submittal, which was larger in dimension, as I've indicated, required more modifications, required 2 additional modifications, one of which was not approved, but it included a yard area modification as well as the modification we're asking for, which is the area size, lot area size modification, was not only approved by the staff hearing officer, but was then appealed and approved by Planning Commission, okay? And so there's a history there. It's not being mentioned in the staff report. This becomes part of the public record. If this gets appealed, which it probably very well, if it gets approved and appealed, this staff report is going to go to the Planning Commission that would be looking at the appeal, and they're going to be reading this, and they're going to have inaccurate information. Okay, so project bigger than ours was approved by the staff hearing officer and by the Planning Commission.
So in regards to the previous project,
Yes.
the massing might have been bigger, but the square footage was pretty much the same, correct? When I look back at the old...
Do you have those drawings?
Yeah, when I look back at the previous plans, they're about 1716, and then this one now is 1724. So that
Okay.
in terms of the square footage, it's pretty close.
Yeah, it's very close. But it couldn't be built the way it was designed.
Yeah.
And no one's noticed that, okay? And this was a problem, as this went through ABR, was repeated problems because the architect wasn't accurately representing from one drawing to the next what was actually occurring. So I haven't gone back to try and check his square footages, whether they were correct or not, but I can tell you that this cannot be built the way it's designed. And I'll give you just one example. So if you look at the site plan, and this is what I mean by taking more than 5 minutes.
No, because this
we're
actually
barely-
is going to be a question of mine that I want to understand what your, not really thought process, but I guess maybe thought process was and how you came up with this design as it relates. And maybe
So
I'll
we're
ask
getting
it so
into
that
your questions.
Well, yeah, just so you in your presentation you can, which
Okay,
you might
yeah.
be.
Yeah,
So
I'll get it. I'll get
one
to
of the
that.
questions that I have is just the awkward floor plan. That the bedrooms are on the first floor, the garage, and then the living area.
Right,
So
right.
that's it sounds like you're getting into that. So while you're explaining the project, if you could kind of go into that too. You may have already were going to do that, but
Well,
but just
I
go ahead.
assumed it would come up as a question, so I am prepared to respond to it. But it's not a simple answer, because you have to go into an analysis of why what was proposed can't be built the way
Go
it's
ahead.
designed.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just a few more things about the staff report and the recommendation. So in the fourth paragraph, it's saying staff is supportive of the lot area modification and adding a second unit on the site if one unit is affordable. I just want to point out that the property immediately adjacent to it, as I indicated in my letter, which was not mentioned by staff, that it is also has slopes that exceed 20 to 30%. It has a lot size that does not meet the 10,000 square foot requirement. It's 8,307 square feet. It's in the same zone, and it has a recognized legal duplex, recognized as being legal on June 10th, 1991. That's part of the public record, okay? And I can submit that document. I have a copy of it if you want it.
That one was the one that the permit was issued by the county in 1977, correct?
No, no, not issued by the county. It's issued by the city and recognized. I don't know about the permitting process. I'm talking about 1991. I'm talking about being recognized as being a legal duplex with the slopes that it has, and it was as built at that time.
city, the documentation was that it was because of that permit that was issued by the city.
But the city could have, at that time, imposed other requirements on it, like making one a legal unit, or calling it legal nonconforming. Instead, is considered legal.
Well, it's legal nonconforming. Am I not on? Not on. But go ahead.
Well, I don't know the technicalities. I'm sure you're up on that. I don't know the technicalities. I know that this is part of the record, that there's a legal duplex right adjacent to it.
Correct, but recognizing it, there's a lot of ways that we become aware of things. There's property of Olive Garden, too, those big mansions that have been lots of different units in it, and it was recognized in a certain year as being legal nonconforming, but those units were established, maybe predating the zoning ordinance in 1925. So being recognized as a legal duplex is different than being permitted as a legal duplex. And
I know it's different. I know it's different. It doesn't change the fact
it doesn't.
that it's a legal duplex without one of them being required to be a affordable dwelling, right?
Yeah, it could be at a time it was developed that wasn't a requirement.
Right, and that's the other thing. The square
yeah.
footages that are designated in the ordinance, those are for new lots being developed now. Those square footages have changed, and the lot slope calculations have changed. Even in fact, since the last time this project was approved as having a second dwelling, the city's designated slope for the lot was 18%. Now it's 27.3. How it actually changed, I have never been able to get an explanation of why that's the case.
Oh, I could tell you why, if you want to know.
Yes, I would. I do.
We did, our GIS information was updated with LiDAR information, and so, which is more accurate than what the contours were before, and so.
Yeah, theoretically, where you don't have huge tree canopies that are blocking the visibility, because that's all from aerial photographs, right?
What you can
it's
do,
from aerial.
if that makes a big difference in this case, you can submit a slope study and show it otherwise.
Right,
That's
right.
allowed
well,
by the zoning
all
ordinance.
I'm saying is that, correct me if I'm wrong, the numbers, the lot area requirements in relation to the slope designation over the years, that those have changed in the ordinance in terms of how much square footage was required for lots of a certain slope. That has changed over the last 15 years. It has changed at least once.
I guess I'm not following what you're saying. But
Okay.
anyways, why don't you go ahead and go
yeah,
on to your,
yeah.
that's a whole other discussion.
All right. So anyway, legal duplex adjacent. Across the street on the other side, there's also a duplex, which has, property has 3 modifications. It's a 3-story building, which I submitted in the photographs. Similar or higher than us in relation to APS in terms of its visibility, but now because of the big canopy trees, you can't really see it. One of the units is yeah, thanks. No, this is not. Thank you.
I did do a site visit, so I am familiar with it.
Okay, so you know the building I'm talking about? There it is. 3 stories straight up. It's a duplex. It has 3 modifications for parking and carport or whatever it is. One of them is unaffordable, designated affordable. So again, my point is that immediately adjacent, we have developments that are very similar in mass, bulk, and scale, as well as in this the idea that there's a duplex on these lots with similar slope issues and lot area issues. So,
Those are mine.
yeah. But in regards to the staff report and the recommendation there of having the new unit being designated the affordable, if one of these two units has to be designated as affordable, we'd rather have it be the existing house because it's older, it's very dilapidated, the finishes are worn. The new construction is obviously going to be brand new. New appliances, new windows, doors, et cetera. So it makes more sense for the existing house to be the affordable unit rather than the new unit. Okay, so then in regards to the building and zoning violations, and I know our neighbors are very tuned into this. Again, slanted depiction of what's gone on here. So, for example, the first paragraph about 2001 and 2002 identified a complete interior remodel and creation of an illegal dwelling unit. So there was a permit pulled to remodel this area, this downstairs area, which previously was not part of the residence. It was pulled in '94. The portion that was installed without permits, apparently, was a sink and counter. It was a 55-inch wide sink or countertop with a sink in it. Okay, that was the illegal part of it. Okay, and the permit was allowed to expire. They never got their final inspection on it, and so that's why it became an enforcement issue because it was. But the way the statement reads, it sounds like they came in and just did all this work without any kind of permit. Okay, but so they did actually pull a permit for it. The second paragraph on page 4 gets into this whole thing about this subfloor space. This subfloor space has never been anything except a dirt floor, unheated. No, there's no light and air. There's no windows. They are allowed to use it for storage, which they do. It's like a subfloor space, so you can store things down there. There's no law against that. There's no ordinance against that. But it's made to sound like, you know, they've been trying to use that space for living area. Well, it's never been the case. And then on the second full paragraph on page 4, complete misstatement in my view. In July 2019, the city initiated enforcement again and issued a notice of violation for an illegal dwelling unit. I have the document right here. There's nothing about an illegal dwelling unit. And in fact, what it states is a full kitchen has been reinstalled in the downstairs area. That's not true. We're talking about a 55-inch wide counter with a single basin sink in it. And I have a photograph of it if you want to see it. And why do they keep putting that in there? Because there are 3 generations living in this house. The grandparents are upstairs, the owners of the property. Their daughter, who is unmarried, has 2 children, lives downstairs. It provides her an opportunity to make food for her kids and herself without having to go upstairs and use the kitchen upstairs. Okay, so she can have some dishes down there, she can have a coffee maker, she can have some facilities down there and taking care of her children, all right? So the neighbors keep, complaining about a second illegal dwelling unit down here. Is that really the intent of the ordinance, is to prevent, an unwed mother from being able to, have a small little kitchenette area, in her part of the house? I'm just saying, is that the intent? Is that the intent of the ordinance? I don't think so. What do you think?
Go continue with your presentation.
Okay.
You need to kind of relax.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying. It irks me because I feel like the owner is being harassed and that the staff report and the staff is siding on behalf of the neighbors who have been harassing the property owner, and undeservedly, in my view, from what I can tell. So the whole idea, and since we're talking about that downstairs area, the idea about walling this off, in my view, again, is you're creating a safety hazard for the space, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. This is part of the residence, okay? It has a stairway. This is a 2-story residence. So you're talking about walling off the garage from the lower story?
So they have to go outside the garage in order to get inside the
And
house?
that's not what staff was saying. Oh, they weren't,
They-
that's
she
one of
was
their
talking
options.
about
but
a
it-
wall
go on.
there.
Yeah.
To
That
me,
was,
why is that even being brought up? That's not that's a to me would be a silly thing to do on any house, to wall off the lower floor from the garage, okay? And in addition, to wall off this outdoor access. So this area of the property is the only backyard area currently, even without this addition, where these folks can go where they're not being looked down upon and viewed from their neighbors. This whole lot area is viewed, as I show in my photographs, second-story windows looking down into this lot. Across APS, these neighbors all look down into this area. So this is the only really private backyard area that the house currently has. And it's also where their trash is located. So what you're saying is, don't put any doors down here so that, in order to take out the trash, they have to go outside and around the house to bring it down to where their trash is stored. To me, that's creating a hardship. Besides the safety issue of the fact, what if there's a fire right here? How do these folks get out? They have to climb out the window. Okay, so the fire requirement for window height is that it's no less than 24 inches off the floor. But for a small child, that still becomes an obstacle to getting out of the house. So if you want to create a safety hazard for those folks, if you want to prevent them from being able to access the one private area of their lot where they're not looking, not being viewed by their neighbors, if you want to make them go outside and empty their trash in order to empty their trash,
okay,
that's fine.
now move on to your-
I don't think those are good ideas. Those are good options in my view. And I would never recommend to a client of mine to wall off those access points. Okay, so we can look at this now if you would like.
Okay, do you want to tell me about your project? You guys don't do that. That's not, I'll have to ask. Okay, that's not polite. Kurt, turn around. So then the project, in regards to what I was saying, like the floor plan and the idea.
Right. Well, so what would you recommend as an alternative? So if you're saying that this is a better alternative in terms of the floor plan?
I'm not saying anything. I'm just asking.
Okay.
So what you can do, if you wanted to be able to explain that to me, if you want to explain about this, why this didn't work, and then that.
I think that's the way to do it.
I apologize for you being all upset about the staff report. That's just like, you explained it's water under the bridge, and it's just focused on your project, and you explained to me.
Well, it's not water under the bridge, because I know the neighbors are going to appeal this project, and it's going to become part of the public record.
I know.
And we're going to have to be defending all this in front of the Planning Commission, and you're always given a limited amount of time, so you can't go into detail, you can't explain.
I'm letting you have time now
well,
to be able to explain it. So what I want to know to be able to make a decision on the project is I want to understand what you're proposing, how you got to where you're proposing now.
Okay, sure. So when this was done by a previous architect, as you know, when the owner came to me, she said, and I was on the ABR when this was reviewed. So there's multiple issues with this set of plans, and I don't know how it got through the staff hearing officer and the Planning Commission. But the main one in regards to what you're talking about today, why not have? Yeah, this would obviously be a nicer arrangement in terms of floor area, where you could connect the bedrooms and the main living areas together on two floors instead of having them be separated. But so existing grade right here is 154.16. You need at least a 2% slope to get water out to the street here. The way it's indicated, although it doesn't show it on this plan, the way it's drawn on the elevations is as though there's no slope. zero slope. He draws it flat. So here is, this is the garage apron right there. That's right where it goes into the garage.
These are part of the record. Don't draw on them.
I'm sorry.
Here's if you want to have the pointer.
Pointer, yeah, thanks. So just to get, you have to get water out to the street. You have to have a surface flow. And, 1.5 to 2% flow from this point of the garage to there is a foot 9 inches, almost 2 feet, okay? So he's drawn the garage level 2 feet lower than it could actually be. You can't drain onto your neighbor's lot. You have to drain out to the street, okay? So this goes up 2 feet. Each of these floor levels go up 2 feet. This goes up 2 feet. The entire roof would be up 2 feet higher than when it's actually drawn, okay? And if you look at what he's showing as, so if you take a scale, he shows, well, this is a different set of drawings than the one I have, but and this is not accurately drawn. So he, on the drawings I have, the highest point of the roof in relation to this, because this is the lowest point where the existing building meets grade, right? You're aware of that. Mm-hmm. So this is really the governing line in terms of the 30-foot height. So, but on the drawings that I have, this building is up right at the 30-foot line. Here he's showing it lower, and I don't know how he got it lower. I don't know. It's probably he fudged the drawing. But in any case, it would have to go up another 2 feet. He's showing this as being the governing 30-foot slope, but in actuality, this is the governing line. It's not a sloping like this. It's this line right here, which governs this height and this location, which governs the maximum height of our building and would also govern this one. So if you take a 30-foot line, take the 30-foot height here, again, I can't draw on here, and you transfer it over here, this building would actually be above the 30-foot height line. And again, this, I don't, he made changes to this since the drawings that I have, which were approved by the ABR. So this is a different roof configuration than the one I saw. So
If I may add, this is the Planning Commission set that was approved.
But even this would have to be 2 feet higher than the way it's drawn.
And the distance is too long for like a sump pump situation? Or what?
Well,
because we see properties on the bluff that have sump pumps to get the water back up to the street.
Yeah, that is, it's an option when you don't have any other, when you can't get sheet flow to the street, but some pumps break down, and they fail. And what happens when they fail is those areas flood and they go into the neighbors' yards. So, I mean, I was pointing in the wrong direction, so it's over here, right? There's, as you know, this property all drains currently to, other than this wall, on this side of this wall, it's all draining in this direction. So this is where, the water is going to go. It's going to naturally go to this spot. So you're going to take all of that site water and you're going to pump it, out to the street in that direction, or you're going to pump it up here. That's a long ways to go for a pump, and the further the distance you have to go or the higher you have to accommodate, the bigger the pump has to be. So you're talking about a huge basin, huge concrete basin below grade with a sump pump in it that always has the potential to fail. What if the electricity goes out in a big storm? Where does all that water go? It goes into the neighbors' yards, and floods their yards. So it's an option people turn to as a last resort, but it's not a it's not a good option, and many civil engineers won't even do it because they know there's potential for failure there. So anyway, yeah, to have this whole area sloping back. So you're suggesting we're going to keep this flat? We can't. There's no way you can keep it flat. It has to slope one direction or another. You can't just go into the neighbor's yard along here, right? So you're talking about sloping it this way and sinking this even lower.
to me, that's.
I'm not talking about anything. I just asked
Oh,
you a
okay.
question.
Well, I'm just saying, none of
Right.
those solutions are good civil engineering or architectural solutions. You're asking for, big liability issues to arise. So, anyway, but let me also mention one other thing about this, in terms of, because the suggestion was being made, oh, well, the reason we're doing the plan we are is because then have this potential to create additional units. Because the bedroom area is separated from the living area. Well, a couple of things. One is that, this project was never approved by the architectural board. Okay, it never got approval from the architectural board. They let it go to SHO without unanimous support or even a majority support for the architectural design. And if you look at the history of it, even in the previous staff report, they were still having problems with it. They were asking for a flat roof as opposed to a sloping roof. They felt that, and it is. It's unattractive. It doesn't go with the existing house. It's poorly designed in a number of ways. Okay, and the Planning Commission did not approve this additional setback into the front yard setback. So it was going to have to be modified, even if it had gone as approved by the Planning Commission. If it went back to ABR, it was going to need to be modified again. And who's to know whether it could actually even be approved, and whether anyone would catch the fact that the driveway wasn't sloping in the right direction. But anyway, in terms of the floor plan, if you were to create, you could do the same thing with the floor plan we're proposing as you could with this. You could put a door right here, and you have one person. Say you're sharing this garage with, to create 2 units here. If you wanted to create 2 units here, person comes up the stairs, that's their unit. They go up another flight of stairs, that's the other unit. So you have the same potential with this design to create, separate units as you would with the design that we're currently showing. They're both joined by a stairway. So to me, to say that somehow this is better or a more appropriate or more somehow ensures better that more units aren't going to be created, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't see how that argument can be made. So when we can go ahead and close that up, thanks.
Yeah.
So I did look at this as an option, and as I studied, there's more. I could go into more detail about other problems with that design, including the fact that the garage, that buried garage encroaches way into this front yard setback, and that a portion of it is proposed to have dirt above it. But if you look at the section, there's no room to put enough dirt to have any kind of planting on top of it. So you're talking about a flat portion of the garage roof, which is in that setback, which would have to have waterproofing and a slab on it, plus dirt on top of that, which then becomes an outdoor area for the unit that was proposed. I don't even know how you do that. I don't know how you make that work. That's very sophisticated waterproofing, and structurally it's very difficult because you're supporting soil. You're going to need at least 18 inches of soil to have any kind of planting on it, and it's a roof area, and so water's falling on it, et cetera. So to me, I've never designed anything like that, and I would never design anything like that because it's fraught with all kinds of problems. So all of those considerations, we started looking at, well, what are the other options? And the other option was to have a driveway access off of APS, and it's problematic as well. It's very problematic because of the fact that the height limitation and the maximum required slopes with the driveway. So if you look at the section that's provided, we are,
going from this is a driveway, the driveway section, and this is existing APS. This is very accurate drawing per survey, and that shows even though it's a small scale, shows the exact grade points of that driveway. So and there's engineering rules governing all of this. Okay, so we're required to have at least a 1.5% slope towards the street from the property line. This is in the public way, this portion. So that we're talking about this right here. We have a slope down here, and then we have, in order to get the garage level at the level that we can or that we need to be in order to stay below the height limitation, we're having to slope down at 18% for this portion. But then there's radiuses that are required at each of these points where you're transitioning from a slope this way and a slope this way, because we have to slope away from the garage, from the face of the garage. So all of this is in conjunction with discussions with the civil engineer to arrive at this. So that puts us at, what is that, 166 for the slab level of the garage. And of course, we need framing below that. And so we really have a 16-inch dimension, and with an 8-foot plate down at the lower floor, that puts us actually below the existing grade at that portion of the yard. So you can see where existing grade is and where we're going to be. But then we also have the height limitation as well. So in order to have space up above it, that's why we ended up with this 8.5 feet from floor level of the garage to the floor level above, because in order to just get an 8-foot plate with a flat roof, we don't even have room to put a sloping roof on this addition because of the height limitation. And that's why that was another reason why flat roof, besides going better with the existing residents, is where we're at today. But anyway, we're working between these slope requirements, civil engineering slope requirements for the garage, the height limitation, and then the existing grade down below, and we're just squeezing in below, into all of that. So had to be very carefully designed in order to meet all those requirements. And then, so what are the advantages? The advantages are that they can have a second unit. I don't really see another alternative. And we're not, we've also, our original proposal, we were a little bit bigger in this direction. We pulled it back to make sure that we were meeting the yard area requirements, which the previous design did not meet. And we also went through a couple of designs with transportation. Originally, we had this garage area closer to the street, but then we weren't having to back out on site. We were going to have to back out either into the public way or out onto the street, which you can imagine how dangerous that would be on APS. So the position of the garage, this was the minimum distance acceptable to transportation between the front lot line and the garage so that we could get this back out area. And then we also carefully designed the stairways down into this backyard area in order to.
How deep is it?
Sure. How deep?
Yeah.
Well, that was the other thing. Transportation asked us to make it deeper. We were more shallow before, but the reason we're at the dimension we are is because when you're pulling back out, it's getting this radius. So that's the other shift we made from our original submittal. This driveway used to go straight. They had us widen it out in this direction and pull this deeper so that this turn could be more easily made.
Well, if you're backing out, you're going like that, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, the visibility in relation to the street. This is something else that's come up, and we with the ABR. Is there still a danger for a car pulling out of there? And this is why we ended up with this illustration showing that once a car backs out, this is in the backed out condition, the driver can, because we're lowering that wall that's right at the property line, the driver will be able to see traffic. Even before they start pulling out, you'll be able to see traffic and pedestrians as well as be viewed by traffic and pedestrians, even in that backed out position. But then once they start to pull out here, of course, they're, they become even more visible. Okay, but so that car is drawn, in this position right here. So we are lowering this existing wall height in order to ensure that visibility issue. I don't know if there's other aspects of the design you want me to address.
Another question would be, why not convert this area, have this all be one unit, and then have this with an addition, have it be be part of the second unit instead of two separate that way?
Well, there's a number of reasons why. Right off the top of my head, no one's ever mentioned that, but I mean, I can think of several.
Okay.
One is that, as you can see on this elevation, we're higher. This lower floor is higher, so you'd have stepped transitions between both. This floor level, if you're connecting to this unit, would be entering at the garage level, and then so then do you make this whole thing one? To me, this is all kinds of issues that come up that seem problematical. I mean, because you also have a stairway currently between this functions as a single family residence right now. With a bar sink downstairs that's going to be removed. But why? You're talking about all kinds of issues there that I've never even thought of. No one's ever made that suggestion. I don't see how that helps the project.
I was just wondering about your design, if you thought of it or why.
No, it's never occurred to me. And I, again, just off the top of my head, it doesn't make sense to me why that would be favorable in some way. So looking at this level, how do you connect this? So you're talking about taking out this bathroom in order to connect to the existing, then you have a vestibule or something that goes up to the stairway that connects up to the upper, because you're talking about connecting this level to the garage level, which already has, this house already has a garage.
Well, it's more of just thinking down in this area, since this has had a history of the city calling it an IDU. The property owner may not envision it being an IDU, but it looks like in terms of our zoning ordinance, it meets the definitions of it. And so,
in reality, it's a bar sink. We're talking about a counter with a bar. That's a sink that's 17 inches wide instead of 12 inches wide. So yes, I hear what you're saying.
You can't
technically,
even have a sink in this area, given what our zoning ordinance says.
Well, you can have one in the bathroom, but you can't have one outside the bathroom.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can have a full bathroom, exterior access, two of the three elements, like I said in the earlier project.
Yeah.
And so you have exterior access, you have a full bathroom, and the sink. So
right.
You can decide and just do a half bath and have the sink. But okay, so that was just a question. All right, so then do you have more in here? Oh, then yeah, one question I had, again, with the floor plan configuration. So the new unit is going to have two bathrooms down here, one in a half bath in the entryway, and then none up where the public area, in a sense. How is that going to work?
How is that going to work?
Well, no, I'm just, don't be argumentative.
I'm sorry.
Okay?
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to understand your project, and it's really, it's kind of putting me off by your attitude, okay?
I'm sorry.
And so I'm trying to understand it, because my concern is with the zoning ordinance. It talks about residential building elements, and it talks about adequate internal connection and inadequate internal connection, and it talks about long hallways. Well, this is totally not connected. There's living area, non-living area, living area. And so if I'm up here visiting, you're having get-together up here, then you go downstairs, it just seems an awkward configuration. So I was just trying to have a discussion.
Sure. Okay. Well, first of all, I'd say that, you know, the space that we've got for a kitchen, a dining room, and a living room upstairs, plus a stairway is the absolute minimum.
Like only 500 square feet.
Huh?
This is like this is small, 500 square feet or something. It's not a lot of area.
No, it's not.
Or
It's not.
475, actually, so it's not even 500.
Right. And so, you know, we have each of these spaces is very tiny. This is like a minimal kitchen area, very minimal dining area, and a minimal living room area. That's one reason why the decks are so important, is so you have some you know, sense of space up there. So to add a bathroom, you can see how it would be problematic to add a bathroom at that level. So I mean, we've been pushed to make that upper floor area, which is, you know, the neighbors on the downhill side are contentious about because of the you know, the visibility of it in relation to them.
Well, just similar to what you're saying, your backyard, that all these people look down on, so then this one's going down into their
Right.
down on them.
Yeah. So we started out with wanting to make it minimal, and we're you know, we're at the 20-foot setback here, we're at the 6-foot setback line here. There's the short answer is you'd be adding more mass to that upper floor area in order to add a bathroom. Plus, I don't see the necessity of it. You see many house designs where you don't put a bathroom right next to the kitchen because it's, you know, you don't want people using the bathroom right next to where you're preparing food. You know, so often in many cases, you put the half bath at the entry level so that not only that it separates it from the main living areas. It's obviously separate from the bedroom areas, which have their bathrooms. But it's if you have guests or it's someone, you're having dinner and someone needs to use the restroom, they go to another area of the house, not immediately adjacent to do so. So there's a lot of reasons why that makes sense. And we do have, besides the garage, we do have, you know, a nice entryway, closet, and bathroom at that mid-level. So there is living, you know, important living area that's very much a part of this design at the mid-level.
Okay, all right, so we got to wrap it. We got to go. Okay, so that was all my questions for right now. So I'd like to open the public hearing. I'll ask you right now, you're up, Mary. Has there been any emails since? Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I saw that one. It was from Kim Stevens' email from, okay, great. Thank you. So we have, okay, so Victoria Valente, if you'd like to come up to the podium. I think it's 2 minutes. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes. You're Trudy Ramsey? Oh, it doesn't say. Oh, you didn't mark the box. That's why. Okay. All right. So you get a total of, it's 5 minutes.
Okay. Let me adjust this.
Yeah, can you just make sure that the microphone is
I
on,
heard it.
please? Oh, you did.
Hello?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
My name is Victoria Valente. I live at 1323 East Coda, 2 doors down from this project, which I oppose. Based on past history at 601, I foresee a 3-story fourplex that would tower over our private backyard where we spend lots of time. I've sent emails regarding the history of violations since 1994. That was the date of the first zoning declaration, zoning compliance declaration that was signed, and I believe I know I sent that to you guys. I've sent emails about the topping and hacking of our shared neighbors' trees to so the owners could clear an expansive view for themselves. And I've commented on the illegal dwelling unit that ABR didn't know about. I understand they submitted some supportive comments for this project. They didn't know about the illegal dwelling unit. I think that their comments should be invalidated because they didn't have a true representation of the project. I wanted to reiterate that at the first ABR meeting on May 20th, Richard Six abruptly proposed a motion that the mass, bulk, and scale were acceptable to the board when mass, bulk, and scale had never been mentioned. I find this highly irregular. We bought our house in 1994, a few months after the Twassons bought theirs. I have only communicated with Terry twice, once before we bought our house to ask about the neighborhood. It was a friendly conversation. And the second time we communicated, Terry criticized our addition, and that's it. I didn't say anything in return. I haven't harassed her. I haven't spoken to her since then. We walk up Las Alturas regularly and pass by the house. I remember when they were excavating under the house behind the garage around 1994. I remember a deep garage and lots of dirt. There were no rooms down there, and the work was being done without permits, apparently. I don't remember any stairs either. At some point, the city cordoned it off with yellow tape and a sign on the door. This was probably 2001. Nobody was living there. I'd like to know when they applied for permits to build the big wall across the middle of their garage or the rooms behind it and install plumbing down there. The only permit I could find was to abate the violations of having built this second unit, which to my understanding has been in use all this time, about 25 years. I think their daughter has been living there. I'm wondering if their house was reassessed after the square footage almost doubled. Our taxes went up a lot after we added 600 square feet. I don't understand why the applicant needs 2,000 square feet, another large garage, this one with view windows, a bathroom, and a balcony. I'm not opposed to an accessory dwelling unit, but they already have one and just need to get permits to do it legally. If this project moves forward as designed and history repeats itself, it always does, I predict an illegal third and fourth unit on a lot too small for 2 units and enough parking, which is definitely an unforeseen land use issue. Thank you.
Thanks. Anne Marie Gott.
Good afternoon. Or is that on now? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
It just sounds a little different for some reason. I apologize.
She might have been closer, maybe.
Affordability should be required if there is a second unit, and you've already got a second unit actually in the first project already permitted on the property with illegal, and I think you are very well aware of it, illegal construction. If you actually approve this, I think what you're doing is creating a nuisance. You're creating enforcement issues. And the city has shown that it cannot even ensure that there is no additional building without permit, even based upon its own history with the client, who is supposed to actually ensure that no additional illegal construction was permitted on site. And what happened? Illegal construction permitted on site. A kitchen is a kitchen. It doesn't matter if it's 55 or 56 inches. It is a kitchen, and it is a second dwelling unit already on the property. Someone is living there. I don't think anybody can dispute that. Regarding the notice for ABR, they were never aware that there was already a second unit with a kitchen when they first saw this project, period. They had no understanding that this is what they were already looking at. I don't think anyone completely understood this project when it was presented. They also did not consider the applicant's past history, which is a predictor of future behavior. And the past history is continued illegal constructions without permits, illegal dwelling units on the property, and you can see that the new addition that they're new unit that they're actually trying to permit very well lends itself to 2 additional illegal units. You know, the city really should not be approving this. If anything is going to be approved, it should be in the footprint of the current house. And that should actually require that everything be up to code. No decision should be made today at all, in my opinion. And because if you are making a decision today, you are going to create enforcement issues, nuisance issues, and problems that will take forever to be abated, if at all. Because we're talking about 25 years of history with this owner with illegal dwelling units and unpermitted work under the house to turn uninhabitable space into habitable space. Further, we're talking also about a notice for today that actually was incorrect because it did not actually say that there was a tree actually in the interior setback. It said it was in the right of way. So how many other things should have actually really been in that notice? Because when you're talking about the enforcement, it's not really talking about an illegal dwelling unit under the house. And it really did not explain that adequately for everyone who should have received that enforcement, that notice. Regarding the backyard, if you looked at the images of the backyard, I believe they've got a patio out there right now. So they use that backyard all the time. There is no problem with them, fearing to go out into the backyard for fear the people, across APS would actually look down into them, into their backyard. If you are actually going to approve this lot modification, how about you pour cement into the first floor? Block it all off, because just putting a wall there is not going to prevent this applicant from turning that downstairs into more habitable space. Because what we're going to be doing is just, again, creating an enforcement issue. And, one of the last things I just want to, mention is that the tree, I don't know if you recognize it, but we're in a climate crisis, which we've heard all over the news. Last week, there was a study that came out that said 29% of our bird population has decreased. That is in part because of climate change, and removing an aged stone pine only helps to contribute to our problems, not only with the bird population, but we are actually then going to be replacing a full-grown tree with a small sapling that is not going to be able to replicate the ability for that tree to reduce carbon emissions. And that's something that people aren't thinking about. They're not thinking about the nesting population of the birds. There's an entire habitat with that tree right now, and replacing it with a sapling doesn't do the climate, doesn't do us any good. And again, I would just say this really needs to go back to the ABR, but really, I don't even know how you can get the city attorney involved in this, because what is the city attorney going to do? Request another covenant, request another legal document saying that they're not going to, have additional illegal building on the property? It hasn't worked. So I don't know how another document is going to work in the future. And it's really, really sad that we're at this point, because I do believe in additional housing, but I don't believe in additional housing this way. Housing that creates nuisances,
Can you
housing
wrap
that
up?
is illegal and substandard. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So no one else in the audience? I would like to mention that I did receive public comment, as Ellen had stated. I received 8 emails or 8 letters from Victoria Valente, one from Trudy and Bruce. I mixed your names together. Ramsey, BJ Dantra, Deborah Delva, Greg Baker, and then this morning from Kim Stevens, and it was signed also again by Greg Baker, and then one in support from Jeffrey Arthur. And I did read all of those, and Ellen already summed up what the comments were. So I will. We haven't received any since the start. Okay, and so I'll close the public hearing. So like I said, I did go out to the site, and actually I was the staff hearing officer back in 2016 or 17 when I went, so I'm familiar with the site, the neighborhood, the issues. And one of the things actually I did notice on the site plan, you drew in the washer dryer here, but I think it's actually up in this area based on pictures that were submitted.
Can I interject on that point? I think that there is a question about where they were exactly, and so this was our best guess based on the images of from Lauren Anderson, but if this image,
yeah, so these are really up here.
like it's further up there. So that was.
These are actually right there.
I've never been in that downstairs area.
Okay, yeah, you just see
and
them
now,
here.
now that I see, so I just drew in
Okay.
based on our best guess from the
Okay.
photos.
Yeah, and that was
so-
based on my
this is to
recommendation
be
of best
removed,
guess
too.
for the applicant.
Okay. So in regards to the request that's before me right now, it is a lot area modification, and the findings for the lot area modification is that it is consistent with the purposes, well, there's lots of findings, but the one, shoot, I lost my paper. There's one that's generally used in terms of, for the lot area modification, is that it's, again, it's similar to what I was talking to the one right before us. The modification is consistent with the general purposes of this title or the specific purposes of the zoning district in which the project is located, and then there's 4 other ones: that secure and appropriate improvement on a lot, or prevent unreasonable hardship due to the physical characteristics of the site, result in a development that is generally consistent with existing patterns of development for the neighborhood. And then the 4th one is the one that is being proposed for me to make in this instance, is to construct a housing development containing affordable residential units rented or owned and occupied in a manner provided for in the city's affordable housing policies and procedures. So in regards to there's the 2-step for the modification findings. In regards to the second one, it is consistent because you're proposing affordable housing. One of the units is going to be affordable. So the question would be, is the modification consistent with the general purposes of this title or the specific purposes of the zoning district in which the project is located? And so my purview and charge in this instance is regards to zoning, and that you're not asking for an open yard modification, and you're not asking for a front setback modification, or you're not asking for a solar height modification. You're asking for a lot area modification. So there was some questions of whether, the size of it. Is there no limit on the size of it? Well, it's more of what fits in per se, because unlike the ADU, which are limited to certain size limits, whether it's attached, detached, part of the unit, part of an existing floor area or not, it's just more of a design type issue, which I see more as a SFDB, or in this case it's ABR because it's 2 units type issue. So in terms of it meets the zoning requirements in terms of the height for 3 stories. it's interesting to hear you talk about the previous plans with the previous architect, because I remember back then trying to get clear answers was kind of difficult. And it's interesting that this is going by your elevations or your representation of what was approved then, but then looking at the square footage is how they seem so close. How is it so much bigger than, when you're just looking at the flat square footages that was approved. And in terms of the square footages, just the area, it's not a large house. 446 square feet of it is the garage. So if it's a total of 1,724, it's really just, 1,200.
Right.
So in terms of the size of it, and it is a small lot, it's not that you're trying to put a 5,000 square foot second unit on the site. And so in terms of the size, just straight numbers, it seems like it's in line. I do have concerns regarding just in my opinion, the awkwardness of the floor plan. And it was nice to hear you explain, the constraints in terms of, it's a requirement of the zoning ordinance to provide 2 covered parking spaces. Unless you do an ADU, then you wouldn't be in that situation in terms of having to do the 2-car garage, which then it would make it lower and it would alleviate some of the concerns. However, in terms of balancing city policies, we wouldn't get an affordable unit out of it. And we would, the idea, I think, a part about ADUs is to have a more affordable unit, but it'd be more affordable by design, which I think we found in Santa Barbara, is that doesn't always happen. Santa Barbara's market's such that it needs to have restrictions on it to be affordable. But that's my opinion. So in terms of what's before me in the request with the lot area modification to allow a second unit, I believe it is an appropriate improvement and consistent with both our policies and the zoning ordinance. I would, then I'd have to get into the conditions and what staff is proposing. And my understanding, it's obvious you've read the conditions because you have big issues with the one regarding the removal of the exterior doors. You went into great detail on that one. And I know I don't want to get you all up in arms again, but when you look at it, I know when you look at it, it's one thing when it's previous owners that violate the zoning ordinance, but when you have the same one in front of you and they're asking for more things, it gets kind of hard.
Sure.
It's,
Yeah, I understand.
The property owner, we have these codes and it's frustrating when people just blatantly ignore them. And when they record things on the property that says, I'm not going to do this, and then they do this. And I understand her need for doing that is to help out her daughter, and I would help out my kids too. I understand that, but we do have a zoning ordinance in that there's only to be one kitchen there. The way to get it legally would be maybe a junior accessory dwelling unit where you share areas and you have that kind of thing. But my understanding that the property owner does not want to go down that route. That's why they're doing either they don't want to go down the route of the junior accessory dwelling unit or the accessory dwelling unit because they need something a little bit larger than what would be allowed by that. Or that's the only thing I could speculate why, because it would reduce.
I'm not familiar with the junior accessory dwelling unit. It's never been part of the discussion. I do know that, from the time the owner bought the property, she has always been anticipating that at some point when she had the means to do so, that they would build a second unit so that both families could live on the property. And that's, as I tried to explain.
I'm good at blocking things out.
I'm not so good at that.
Okay, we're just...
this issue about reinstalling the counter and the sink downstairs has to do with the fact that she's trying to keep her daughter in the house. Her daughter is threatening to move out. She wants to keep her there. She wants to keep the family together. She wants to help her raise her grandchildren. And so that's what's been driving that. And now with the additional second dwelling, there's no need to have the countertop downstairs, or the sink and countertop downstairs, because both families will have their own dwelling with a full kitchen. So I see this as, as long as we're meeting the ordinance, we've reduced the modifications we're asking for, we reduced the size, bulk, and scale. We're keeping it to a minimum. We really are keeping it to a minimum. That this gets the owner what they'd like in their long-term vision for the property, and it's meeting the code. And so this issue that's been arising with this downstairs area can go away. That's the way I see it.
Okay. So in regards to the conditions,
and of course, I can't guarantee that the owner's not going to, find some reason to put in a sink again downstairs. I can't guarantee that myself, because all owners of their properties have the right or have the ability, to take actions on their property that the architect has nothing to do with. So I can't guarantee that it won't happen, but the intent, in terms of what the owner described to me and what we've tried to design, has been so that there could be two families. There's no intention, in fact, to rent out either of these units. They're going to be two families of the same, three generations living on this property, as opposed to, one family in one and then renting out the other. So that's my understanding of what's intended.
Okay. So in terms of zoning ordinance, and the zoning ordinance does allow you to have two of the three elements that I discussed, the full bath, exterior one. And so I would, instead of this condition, and I understand where staff's coming from and appreciate the options that are laid out in the staff report, that I would change D, which says removal of the lower level exterior doors of existing residence, and just make it clear that the laundry facilities, this laundry room, that not only be the washer, dryer, and sink be removed, but the plumbing back to the source, that there's just no plumbing in this area.
That makes sense to me. And that's what we would prefer as well, to
Right.
keep that access, because that's an important backyard area to have access to.
And so the plans shall show that, and also show that the plumbing and, sewer and all that from this area be removed
Yeah.
back to its source.
Right.
And then the other concern, the other condition that I would put on this property, and I think, and it is supported by the zoning ordinance, is that this bathroom here and then up here, it can only be a half bath. There's not one here. If this was changed after, because I know projects get changed sometimes after, and staff looks at it substantial conformance, but that it only be a half bath. Just reduce the chances of it being a triplex instead of a duplex.
Sure.
Upper level and entry level, you're calling it. So it's limited to half bath only.
Yep.
Now, Ellen, I have a question. In regards to the zoning declaration compliance that was recorded, it's limited to one dwelling unit, so that's going to course, have to be released since there's going to be 2. Now, are you going to, I don't see a condition here, but will they, given the history here, is there, I guess it could be done in plan check, but I'm wondering a new document being recorded that the owner understands that there's only 2 units here. Has staff had any discussion on that, or?
That was not included in the staff report, but that could be a condition to ensure that this shall not be used to create a new unit. So to limit, to kind of have that zoning compliance declaration, acknowledging that if this is approved, that there would be 2 units, but for this 1 unit, would not be allowed to have a second.
Well, it's just limited to 2 units. Yeah, I'm trying to think how to write that so that it's just so it's clear for the record and that the owner understands that there's just 2 units and that in enforcement, if it's enforced on, it's just stronger penalties. That a written instrument be recorded so that there's only the 2 units on site. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so with those change to condition D and adding, I'm not sure if it's going to be separate conditions or if it'll be just run on, but the 3 new provisions that I'm adding, is that the zoning, and I'm not sure if that's the right term, but a written instrument or zoning declaration compliance, recognizing that only 2 legal units on this site, that the entry level and upper level, that's just limited to a half bath there, and then that this is shown, but I'm going to put it as a condition that this be removed, washer, dryer, sink, plumbing back to the source, and then this needs to be corrected. I also actually wanted to clarify condition number C, which talks about basement level of existing residence, because I think that's what's causing some confusion. It says right now, the basement area within the existing residence shall not be utilized for habitable space, and then in parentheses it says subfloor area. So I want to change the order around, say, the area noted as subfloor space on sheets A to O, which is this one, in the basement area shall not be. So make it
That's clear.
Clear
Thank you.
what it is, so
Appreciate
that it's
that.
this area,
Yep.
so that people, or so that future review of this or anyone, they're like, well, they're using this, but that's not what it's mean. It's just recognizing that this is subfloor area. It's unfinished right now.
Right.
And that's going to remain that way.
Yep.
Okay. So with that,
Can I get a clarification? So all of this to be removed, washer, dryer, but then this one would be, they could propose it?
well, they're permitting it, right? It's as-built.
Right, so I just didn't know which one, if there was an option between
No,
one
there's
or the
not
two.
an option.
Okay,
This one's here and this one's to be removed.
okay, thank you.
So, yeah. So with that, so the findings, the environmental review findings, and then the lot area findings. So with that, I'll make the findings. I don't need to make any changes to them, to the findings outlined in the staff report, subject to the conditions of approval that was proposed by staff, and then the revisions we discussed today. So my action, it's appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and if you were to appeal it, do it here at 630 Garden Street. I don't want you to go up to City Hall. That's where all the other appeals are filed. So it's here at 630 Garden Street. The Planning Commission also has oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they can also call it up during that same 10-day appeal period. And if either of those would occur, Ellen will contact you.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks very much.
Okay, sure.
And sorry about the contentious tone of voice.
Yeah.
We just had an appeal yesterday.
I adjourn the meeting.
And
You can turn off.